it is. Ooh-ah. I've actually been getting some responses to my videos, my posts, my live streams, and that's a good thing. There was one response that I got that I'd like to address. So it's somebody who said, clickbait. And that's because they tuned in probably last night or the night before when I was driving. And, I don't always speak at these things. I kind of wait for somebody to get on and respond or whatever. And so so many people do, they got on, they saw that the title was something, and then they just kind of made a snap judgment. This is clickbait. He's not really doing. I'm like, well, you haven't checked out any of my other stuff to see that no, it's not clickbait. I actually do talk about the subject at hand and reply to people, in addition to some of the other things that I do when I'm driving, like talking about the area that I'm from and, show off my city and everything. So, yeah, and, there's a lot of people out there and a lot of people that do that kind of thing in their lives. They just kind of they take about 5 seconds to make a judgment on something, and that's just whatever. So no, this is not intended to be clickbait. I do talk and respond. Right now this is a subject that's interesting to a lot of people, including me. It's something I've been interested in a long time. I can go back to, I think at least 2006 when I made some posts on this very subject. The third American Civil War. And the reason why I say third Civil War is because we forget that our first Civil War was the American Revolution. And historically, if you understand anything about that, it really was a civil war. It was neighbor against neighbor. There were people who were loyal to England who lived in, at the time, the colonies. And things got really messy, especially in the South, because people would go, if they knew somebody was a loyalist or if they knew somebody was a rebel, they would visit each other in the middle of the night and drag them out of their home. War, I don't know what it is. Originally our from the United Kingdom or England, and when we rebelled and declared independence in 1776, the issue was very much something that was to be determined. Actually, we really didn't achieve our independence until about 1815, because England came back, because we decided the first time wasn't enough, so we fought another war with England, in the War of 1812, and England kind of, this recent insurrection, people are talking about, this is only the second time that the capital had been attacked and taken over. Well, the first time was in 1814 when the British did it. They burned down the White House. And so, as a matter of fact, that's why the White House is called the White House. That's why it is white. And there's a TV show, which I didn't think was a very good show. I didn't like it very much. I forget the name of it. But in one part of the show, they're in a building and in a business, and they said, where's the business that was here? It's like there's no sign of the person who ran the business. And then they noticed that the walls were whitewashed. To the other, why do you whitewash walls? And the other one said, to cover up a fire, just like they did with the White House. They're like, holy crap, this place had been burned down. And of course, all hell broke loose when they realized. So, yeah, I think the real subject is history, and there's a lot of people who think they know history. The thing about history is that history is not as easy to understand as many people think. What we get when we're taught in sound version of history, and oftentimes there are inaccuracies or outright lies written in our history books because of bias that comes in, because of the saying that the victor writes the history books. History is actually a science, and it's a very hard science. You know, there's a lot of examining of forensic data, trying to gather physical evidence, and then there's the consideration of different points of view, you know, and it's what makes it very difficult to understand is oftentimes people of different cultures, different languages, you have to really understand a person's culture to understand their point of view, where they're coming from, and their language. And that's not an easy thing to do. That's why there's a lot of scholarship that goes into that. But, you know, for the most of us amateurs, it's an interesting thing to talk about, think about, because, you know, essentially it's a story of our past. But I don't trust people who come to conclusions about things and then want to stick to that conclusion like this is the end-all, do-all answer. That's not how a real historian talks, you know. A real historian talks like, well, this is what the evidence suggests. This is the common. There are also alternative points of view. It doesn't mean that there are alternative truths. There's just viewpoints. Like people standing in different parts of life and looking at something as subject or whatever's happening, and they have a different viewpoint on it based on where they are. Almost like in Star Wars, you know, and they talk about it is true from a certain point of view. Yes, I'm also a big Star Wars nut fan. But guys, I have the title on there. I update the title to fit the date. You know, I drive at about midnight every night except weekends. And you know, sometimes at midnight it shifts over, so I just roll over the day, round up the day. And I don't always feel like yakety. And you know, a lot of times somebody gets on, they feel like they want to talk, that's fine. often they don't. That's fine too. I can go on and ramble on for quite a bit. You know, as we get closer to the day tomorrow, looks like Washington, D.C. is turned into what they're referring to as a green zone, which means an area that's an occupied area that's safe for, I don't know, the occupiers. I hate to think of things like that. I mean, they aren't occupiers. They're legally the ones who have the right to be there. The occupiers were the ones who violently tried to take over and then ran away. I mean, I guess, what was it, Sunday? It was announced by the FBI that they were hearing chatter indicating that there were going to be a bunch of protests starting on Sunday at all 50 state houses and in Washington, D.C. And I was like, you know what? I think this will die down for quite a bit, but it won't go away. And it'll settle into a long insurgency. And we'll have different variant groups. There's white supremacist groups. There are neo-Confederate groups. There are probably the most benign group are just believe that the election was stolen, who bought into this this lie without the evidence being present. At least, you know, at least just put it this way. Let's talk like we're a historian. Let's say you're given plenty of opportunities to present evidence, and people still have not produced anything convincing about election fraud happening. And there have been a lot of people who have been very patient. I mean, they've even at the polls, counting the vote, which I think is probably the first time that's ever been done. So, yeah, don't base your life around something you can't prove. I would say don't base your life around a lie. No, don't base your life around something you can't prove. I mean, if you went into the workplace tomorrow and said, you know, Joe Blow doesn't deserve that promotion. He's a liar. He's been produce a bit of evidence. There'll be a box waiting for you at your desk, or wherever you work, and maybe some security guards waiting there too to escort you out. You got to have evidence when you make these kind of accusations. But I'm not talking about just accusations. I'm talking about when you're going to base your life, your career, your future around something. You got to have real evidence, not just something you read on the internet, not conspiracy theories, not ideas. You have to have actual smoking guns. But that's just the most benign part of it. I mean, there are not very benign elements to this. There are people who have always been in the background, who've been encouraged to come out. And the evidence does support that very strongly, that the President of the United States is sympathetic to hate groups and has been actively encouraging and even fanning their fire, their spark into a conflagration that'll burn up this country, all for, well, I believe that Donald Trump does believe in this stuff. He doesn't quite respect diversity in this country, but B, he's been cynically using it to try and further his political ends. And, you know, up until this point, most politicians have had respect for our system of government and have had respect for the customs and traditions. And see, this guy has absolutely zero respect. He doesn't care about it. He just wants to be in power and control. And his legacy is horrible. You know, we're talking about, I mean, it's like the things that they're bragging about that they've done. Oh, we rushed the vaccine into production and we're distributing it. No, you've failed at that. The vaccine distribution has turned out to be a failure, and you've given your opponents a chance to step in and take over with leadership. And, 3 million Americans out of work, 3 million more Americans out of work than when we started. Just the whole situation with the beer flu, the reaction to it has been lame. There's been no leadership there. There's just been, at first there was denial, and then there's politicization of the whole situation. Don't wear a mask, don't do this, don't do that. And I'm like, we gather around us a lot of very smart experts, and we need to have faith in those experts, because after all, when Donald Trump took office, he appointed a lot of these people, and then when they say something he doesn't like, obedient for him, then he fires them or threatens them, tries to get them to say what he wants to hear. That's not the way to lead. You gather these people, and then you try and follow what they say to the best of your ability, because that's how we protect people ultimately. And no, we didn't do that. We just kind of played this game, and now we are approaching the casualty rate of wars. We've already surpassed the casualties of World War I and World War II. The Civil War, which was the bloodiest war in American history, was somewhere 680,000 casualties, dead people. And that's a grim benchmark that I hope we don't achieve or shoot, that we don't shoot for or we don't achieve. And but under this past president, who I'm honestly happy to see go away, I hope he goes away in a way that he has no say or anything in the future. But legacy. And people say, well, what's he going to be remembered for? And then some of his apologists, he's going to be remembered for this and that, and he's a great man. And every argument they can come up with is really just kind of a lie. There may be a few things there that we did that were decent, but for the most part, it's been just a huge disaster. And you kind of wonder, well, who voted for this guy? What is their beef? And that is an interesting thing to address, because who was it? Bill Maher was talking about very intelligently, I might add. I don't always agree with what Bill Maher says, but he was talking about the lady that was killed in the Capitol building, trying to break into the House chamber. And he said, well, what she was a former Air Force, a veteran, who had her own business but was in so much deep debt that she was having these deep problems with her in her life and looking for people to blame. And he said, to be honest with you, I don't, and this was what made Bill Maher so good about this. He said, I don't really necessarily fault her for that, because she's living in California, and this great blue state of California, and here we've made it impossible for people to make a living with so many regulations and rules and red tape and everything. So yeah, I could see why she would want to support anybody but. So anyway, I've made it to my destination, so I must say goodbye for now. Maybe when I live stream later on this morning, I will be in the mood to talk, or maybe I'll just be silent. I don't know, but don't consider that as like I'm just using clickbait to try and get people to watch a boring video. So, see ya.